Behind the Mirror of Music with Dannii Cohen.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Mirror of Music. My name is Dannii Cohen. This week's guest is Raissa Katona Bennett. Raissa Katona Bennett joined the original cast of The Phantom of the Opera 9 months into its first year on Broadway. Her phantoms included Steve Barton, Kevin Gray, Brett Little, Davis Gaines, Jeff Keller, Hugh Panaro, and Timothy Nolen. She was also part of the LA production and various touring casts. Next to her time on Phantom, Raissa starred in Cats, Steel Magnolias, Parade, Fun Home, The Fantasticks, Beauty and the Beast, and much more. She is also a beloved cabaret and concert performer. I hope you will enjoy the show.
Hi, Dannii.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
What are you doing right now in your life and career?
I have just finished doing a one-woman show. It was called Stories and Songs from the Journey, and I did it at the Music Theater of Connecticut here in Norwalk, Connecticut, which is where my home is. I also have an apartment in New York City, but I spend most of my time here, and it's only an hour from the city, so it's very commutable. So that's what I've just finished doing, and it's something I'm going to start working on with a wonderful actress and director, Sally Mays, to possibly bring into the city. And also I'm going to be bringing it to Wallingford, Connecticut for a benefit concert for a friend of my mother, my late mother's. My mother was very involved with the Historical Society in Wallingford, Connecticut, as she was here in Norwalk, Connecticut, which is where I was born. And so I'll be doing that up there as well. That's the career thing that's on the agenda for next. Yes. And of course, auditioning, always auditioning.
How did you fall in love with music and theater?
My mother said I came out of the womb singing, and I would believe that. I've always loved to sing and always loved to perform. And in fact, I wrote a monologue about it, and it's on my website. There's a YouTube video of me doing this monologue that then leads into the song "It's Possible" from Seussical, which is on one of my CDs. I always wanted to perform, and my parents were nervous about that because they didn't think you could make a living in theater, much less do a Broadway show. And so they encouraged me to be a baby nurse. And one day when I was sitting in chemistry class in high school, I remember thinking, I'm not interested in any of this, and I don't understand it. So I went down to see my music teacher and said, what do I do if I want to perform? And he sent me to a wonderful voice teacher, Hilda Reggio, in New Haven, Connecticut, who was very well known at the time for working with, she was a well-known opera singer, June Anderson, and lots of other, great singers in this area. And so I started working with her and taking voice lessons, and I had probably between 4 and 6 voice lessons before I auditioned for the Hart College of Music in West Hartford, Connecticut, which was a very prestigious conservatory at the time. It still is, actually. It's just called the Hart School of Music now. And I was accepted. So it's a good thing I took the lessons, however, because I probably would have gone in auditioning with something from a chorus line. And instead, she encouraged me to do an art song, taught me an art song and things like that, so that I went and singing the appropriate stuff. I knew nothing at that point. So that was when I was about 17. So that's when I guess I officially started.
What was your first professional role?
What was my first professional role? My first professional role was, let's see, that first summer we did company and I played April. We did chorus line and I played Cassie. We did Pippin and I played Catherine, and we did, oh heavens, Evita, and I played the mistress. So that first summer, those are the 4 roles that I did.
What was it like to start out?
It's actually fairly interesting. I was dating a fella at the time who was a theater major, and I was already teaching school. I was teaching music pre-K through 12 because I got my degree in music education so that I could always have something to fall back on. And I loved teaching too. And he asked me to give him a ride to the something called the NETCs. It stands for the New England Theater Conference. They have in New York, they call them the Straw Hats. It's kind of a clearinghouse for all the summer stock theaters in that area. So all of the summer stock theaters from the Northeast would meet up in Boston and have one large audition, and you could audition for all the theaters at once. And so this old boyfriend of mine had said, hey, I don't have a car. Would you give me and my friends a ride? And let's see if we can get you an audition slot too. And I got in as an alternate. And then he and I ended up getting all of the same offers for that summer. And so we took the best one, which was the Boothbay Harbor Dinner Theater in Boothbay Harbor, Maine. It's incidentally where they shot the movie version of Carousel. And it was a great job because, we were just young and starting out. And so you don't make a lot of money as a non-equity summer stock, non-union, non-equity is non-union. And we wanted to wait tables as well. So this was a dinner theater, so we could wait tables as well as perform. And then literally a week before we left for the summer, after turning down all the other offers, we got a phone call from the producer. And he says, well, I've got good news and I've got bad news. So give us the good news. The good news is they caught the arsonist. The bad news is they caught him after he torched our 150-year-old theater. So we still would like to try and have a summer season if you want to come up, but it's going to be tough, and bring everything you have that you think you would use for props or costumes, because we lost everything. So we went up and we rehearsed during the day, and at night we built the theater. And they never asked us to do that. We just did it. It was like, Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney. It's like, we build a theater. And it was a very, very bonding experience, and ended up that 4 of us from that summer moved to the city together and got one large apartment. So that was how I started out, doing summer stock at the Boothbay Harbor Dinner Theater and rebuilding that theater. And it still stands today, I'm happy to say. So that was how I started out. I never went back to teaching.
What an amazing experience. I mean,
it was amazing. I mean, we're lucky that they still wanted to do the season. Okay.
Okay.
So we're joined by my 2 friends since we left. One is Buddy, that's my dog in the bed there. And this is Cowboy,
Oh,
my foster dog, and he's looking for a home. As you can tell, he's ferocious.
sweet.
Yeah, I call him boneless breast of dog, because he's any position you want. He's about a year and a half old, toy poodle, maybe a little Yorkie in him. And he's super cute. Aren't you, little dude? Yes, okay, well, he's very tired. He'll just sit in my lap here.
You made your Broadway debut with Phantom, I believe.
I made my Broadway debut in
Yes.
Phantom of the Opera. Previous to that, I had done the first national tour of Cats, which is considered a Broadway
Yes.
production contract, but it tours, and it's great because you sit down in cities for months at a time. So that was first, and then doing Phantom of the Opera was second, which was great. Yeah, and I was in it for 5 years.
What was your experience like starting out on the show?
In Phantom?
Yes.
Well, at the time I was, it had been running for about 9 months, so I joined it very early on. And you get a rehearsal period of 10 to 6 every day for 2 weeks. I was in the show by the end of the first week. So it was invigorating. It was exciting. It was a lot of hard work, but actors like me, most actors like hard work when they're doing something they love. It doesn't even seem like work. It was very physical. And I went in to the show. My track was The Princess and The Mirror Bride, and I understudied Christine. So I rehearsed quite a bit. I was at every understudy rehearsal and then some during the week. It was a wonderful experience. It was you have during that time, during those 5 years, really I had no other life outside of the show, because we were on what was called the hit show schedule, which meant we had I think we just had Sunday night off. I'm trying to remember now. Definitely Tuesday to Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to Saturday. Oh, no, we performed Monday through Saturday. We only had Sunday off, I think. So you didn't have, like, if other schedules were that you would have 2 shows on a Saturday, and then you wouldn't be, I'm getting confused now. Wait, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Okay. Yes, we had all of Sunday off. A lot of shows have a Sunday matinee. So then you have Sunday night, Monday night off before you start back for Tuesday. But we just had Sunday off. So it seemed like we did have less time between, so it was impossible really to go away or anything. That was the day you did your laundry and your house cleaning and your shopping. It was like that.
Yeah, we knew that it was such a hectic schedule for Phantom back then.
It was a very hectic schedule, particularly because once I was into the show as the princess, I was in rehearsal. Every week there's an understudy rehearsal, typically again from 10 to 6 on a Thursday at the time. And so as the Christine cover, I was there every Thursday. And then if they had somebody that were putting into the show new, like a new Phantom, a new Raoul, I would get used for those rehearsals too. So often I would be rehearsing on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Yeah, it was very, very intense, but it was great.
Did you get to work with Hal Prince during that time?
I sure did. Hal was very, very good to me. He was a wonderful man. Hal, I met Hal at the opening, a Phantom of the Opera, because at the time I was married to one of the cast members. And I remember going up to him at the Beacon Theater. The opening night party was at the Beacon Theater, and he was sitting there with Andrew Lloyd Webber. And my ex-husband, who was my husband at the time, introduced me to him. And I said, "Oh, Mr. Prince." He goes, "No, Raissa, call me Hal." And every time I saw him from then on, I would say, "Hey, Mr. Prince." He goes, "Raissa, it's Hal." And I'd say, "How do you remember my name?" I'm talking about 20 years later. Anytime I saw him, he remembered my name. And I was just, he goes, "Why do you think I would remember? You're memorable." I said, "Well, you're sweet, but you've worked with literally thousands of people at this point in your career. How do you remember my name?" So, but he did. He was great. And then he also auditioned me, wanted to see me for the first National Tour Parade, which I also did under his direction. He was a wonderful, wonderful director and an incredibly kind and sweet and intelligent man. Really, really wonderful man. I'm very blessed and grateful to have had a chance to work with the legendary Hal Prince. Truly wonderful. No detail was too small for him. I remember one of our rehearsals. He would come in for brush up rehearsals, and we were doing the scene in Act 2. Oh God, I'm blanking right now. It's the scene with "Past the Point of No Return" in it, and we were all carrying baskets and things like that. And he stopped us and he said, "Your basket's not heavy. That wine glass doesn't have any wine in it." Things to different members, to the ensemble. That kind of detail was important to him. And it's something that I missed seeing over the years as I went back and saw it. At some point, at any point in time, someone in the theater is watching you. Even if you're in the ensemble in the back row, someone's watching you, and you are a part of that picture, that whole scene that's being created. And it's so important. And Hal cared about those kinds of details. And theoretically, I've carried it with me for the rest of my career. I always think about that.
What are some of your greatest memories of performing the role?
It's a personal one. It's the first time I went on as Christine. My little brother happened to be visiting from Vermont. He had been bringing me a Christmas tree for my apartment, and it was sold out. This was only like a year and a half into the run of the show, so it was constantly sold out. And the stage managers said, "Don't worry, we'll put him near box 5." So if you're familiar with Phantom, box 5
Yes.
will be empty for me. So near box 5, there was another box seat where the technicians would be the stagehands to like pull the silks off of the proscenium in the beginning of the show and other things. And so they put my little brother there. And when I came out for my curtain call, he had jumped to his feet so fast and was clapping and crying so hard that my friend Fred Smith was a stageman. He goes, I had to reach out and grab the back of your brother's shirt. I was sure he was going off onto the floor of the stage. He was so excited, and I could see him, so I was able to blow him a kiss. So that was amazing. So that's personal, but it was going on for the first time as Christine was, as a dream come true. In particular, that weekend, I think I went on 2 or 3 times because both of the girls were out. And at that time, you had to, both the regular Christine and the alternate Christine covered each other. So if the alternate was out, the regular Christine, the full-time Christine would cover. So it's not like, it wasn't like that in the last couple of years. Everybody rotated through the role, which was, I think, a lot nicer. So it was unusual, to get the chance to go on. I did end up going on quite a few times over the years, but that first weekend I got to do it several times. And let me tell you what, at the end of that weekend, I felt like I had been beaten up because the costumes are all very heavy. Christine is in every scene but one, and she's wearing very heavy costumes. And quite frankly, you're thrown around the stage quite a bit.
Yes.
so it's physically and vocally demanding, but it's wonderful.
What were some of the Phantoms you got to work with?
I got to work with, Tim Nolen, Chris Grondahl, Mark Jacoby, Kevin Gray, Steve Barton. I taught Davis Gaines the role, and they put him into the LA company. And on his opening night, he sent me a telegram and flowers thanking me for rehearsing him. Who else? Oh my God, I'm trying to think of all Jeff Keller, of course, because he was there. I'm trying to, in LA, I worked with Norman Large, Brad Little. Brad Little did the tour that I also subbed in on. Trying to go back in my memory to think of all the Phantoms that there were after Michael left. I got to meet Michael and hang out with him because, again, I was married to a gentleman that was in the show at the time, and he was a very nice man. I'm trying to think. I think Tim Nolen came in after him, but I think that's it of the Phantoms I got to work with on Broadway and a couple on tour. Yeah.
How did you see the role of Christine?
How do I see the role of Christine?
Yes, for yourself.
So first of all, it's been a long time. It's been about 30 years. Christine was a wonderful character to play. All of the roles that I'd done up until that time and past that time for quite a while were ingenues. And she was a classic ingenue, but she had the complication of being really kind of in love with 2 men. I think she truly was in love. My Christine was in love with both the Phantom, and even though she feared him, and Raoul. It was she had a wonderful journey to take, from being shy and afraid, but also having really quite an ambition in her to rise to the top. She had a lot of daddy issues, obviously, with her dad dying. I'm just putting it into a nutshell. And so, of course, she's going to attach to the Phantom as a father figure, but he was also a sexual figure for her. The whole music of the night is a bit of a sexual awakening for her, and it leaves her quite confused as well. So she was an ingenue, and I said she was typical. She had the trappings of a typical ingenue, but there was a lot of complications within her character because of her background and her history,
Yes.
and everything. Yeah.
And did you read the original book?
Oh yes, absolutely. The Penny Dreadful novel. As a matter of fact, I read it several times. I read it in high school, but of course I reread it when well before I got the role, because again, my husband at the time was in it, so I read it then. And it was really quite masterful how Andrew took the things from the novel and created like one character, for example, Madame Giry is a combination of Madame Giry and the Persian. And the way that Hal directed it was masterful. It was very cinematic in a way, the way he used the travelator and scene changes with the black flats and Madame Giry holding up the lantern and talking to Raoul, and it was really, really quite wonderful. I think it's some of Andrew's best work. I am one of the people who happens to be an Andrew Lloyd Webber fan. I love most of his work. There's a couple of things I don't love, but I love it. I love singing it. It's a challenge to sing it because he writes vocally for you. I mean, Christine is written, parts of it written like a Puccini opera, and parts are a pop song. And as a singer, particularly the Phantom of the Opera song, that's a good example. You're singing in a pop style in the basement. In sleep, he sang to me, and then you're singing a high E at the end. And that whole melisma, the Oz at the end, is very Puccini-esque, very Puccini-esque. So it's challenge, and I like a challenge, you know.
I think it's weird that some people are down on his work now because some don't like him for personal reasons. But I think the one thing you can't say about Andrew Lloyd Webber is that he doesn't write good songs.
You know, people love to hate someone who's successful. And I remember when Phantom first came out, they were saying he stole the theme from music, God, Music of the Night, da 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 da, from Come to Me, Bend to Me, from Brigadoon. I want to say no. There's really only eight notes and whatever in a scale, and then the half tones. You know, some of them are going to get used in a similar way several times. People just love to hate success, and the proof is in the success of his musical. I mean, the critics loved to hate Cats, and it ran and it ran and it ran, and it was delightful. And you have to keep in mind what the context is. What are you going to see? Cats was a wonderful adaptation of the poems of T.S. Eliot, fanciful and fun, and a light entertainment that wove a story into, that had a moral. It was great. You know, it's not Kafka. It's entertainment, and the public proved that they loved it. They loved a lot of it.
Yes, I was performing in Cats for you.
Oh, I loved performing in Cats. First of all, it was my big break. I had been doing summer stock out in Jennerstown, Pennsylvania, and I went out to my husband at the time was in Cats. We'd both been in Jennerstown, Pennsylvania, doing summer stock, and then before we had left for summer stock, we had both auditioned for Cats in New York. I never got past being typed out because I'm 5'3", and in Cats there's a hierarchy. The way they would cut it down at the time, if thousands of people show up for an audition, so they do something called typing, where they line you up and say, "Thank you, thank you, thank you. Rest of you go." So I was kitten size at 5'3", but the role that I did in Cats, which was Jelly Lorm Griddlebone and Jenny Anidots, the tap cat, were the mature cats, the adult cats. But in order to cut down all the people that they had to see, anybody who was 5'3" and smaller had to be a dancer, a major dancer, and I was not. I am a singer who dances. At the time, I was a singer who dances. Now I'd say I'm a singer who moves well. So I got to be seen when I went to San Francisco to visit my husband. They had an open call there, and there they only had about 700 people show up. So I got seen, and I'll never forget, I wore a purple jumpsuit and super high heels, and which was not easy because you're on a raked stage, so now you're even higher. And when I did my stuff, the David Taylor was the casting and production supervisor at the time, and he said, "Where have you been? You're perfect for this." And I didn't say, "Well, I've been too short before this." And then I got the job, and I loved it because it just represented so much in my life. I loved the music. It was the first, when I had been dating my husband, we had heard the concept album of Cats. One of his friends had gone to London and gotten the concept album, and we listened to it before it even was produced in the West End, and fell in love with the music then. And that was before the opera cat stuff was in there. That was when it was still Billy McCall, the pub song. And then when it came to Broadway, I saved up all my money and got tickets for his birthday in the last row of the Winter Garden Theater. And as we were watching it, we're going, well, you could do that part. Because I thought it was just a dancer show. I could do that part. And when I could do that part. And those ended up being the parts that we did, you know, just a couple of years later. It was pretty exciting. So it represented a lot in my life. And there were other things too. Honestly, the other thing that's personal is that I had been 100 pounds heavier, and I'd lost 100 pounds, and to be standing on the edge of the stage singing a cat in a unitard with your arms up on a high B flat is like, wow, I'm comfortable standing. You know, I was at that point a very little cat. So it represented a lot of hard work on my part, both professionally and personally. So it was amazing. And I have to say, traveling with the company was so wonderful. You know, we were very fortunate. There was not one person in that company that did not get along with another. Everybody loved each other. We traveled with 17 real cats. Yeah, it was a family. It truly was. And I just wish that back then, and also in Phantom, I wish that we had email and cell phones, because it was really hard to keep in touch with people after we got back, unless you saw them at auditions and sometimes being another show. But it's been so much easier now. We've since had a couple of reunions, and now that there's Facebook, we've been able to be in touch both with the Cats company and with the Phantom company. But until then, it was kind of hard to stay in touch. And you work so hard as an actor in between, when you're working as an actor, and in between the shows, you're working very hard to get a next show, to do your survival job. So you're never not working. So, but it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. I dearly loved every moment of doing Cats. Well, there were 38, I think there were 38 cast members. And I was an understudy. I sang in the Cats chorus. So there's 4 singers in a booth above the orchestra, because it's so demanding physically that you have to augment the vocals with the soprano, tenor, alto, bass. But I covered Jelly Lorm, who sings Gus as the cat at the theater door, and then she becomes Griddlebone, and they sing the Italian aria. And then I also covered Jenny Anydots, Jelly Lorm, who sings Bustopher Jones, and also does the tap cat, the big tap cat with her big fat suit. So I did those 2, and I went on quite a lot for both of those parts. It was wonderful. It was a great experience. I loved it.
We also talked about Parade. That's such an important musical as well. What is it like doing this?
Parade was an intense experience on many levels. First of all, the subject matter. For your listeners who may not know, it's the true story of Leon Frank, who was a Jewish man who went down to Atlanta, Georgia. He married a Southern belle, a Jewish woman, and he ran a pencil factory, and he was accused of raping and murdering Mary Fagan on Confederate Memorial Day during the parade, which is where the title comes from. Ultimately, he was exonerated by the governor, but the night before he was going to be released, a mob broke him out of prison and hung him. And so that's important, because when we were rehearsing the show, which was again an amazing experience, first of all, it was Hal Prince. Alfred Urey, the book writer, was there every day. He was the not every day, but often he was the book writer also for Driving Miss Daisy. Patricia Birch, the original choreographer, and Jason Robert Brown. And Jason Robert Brown not only conducted it and taught us the show and wrote it, but he actually toured with us as our conductor at that time. So it was amazing to have that whole creative team there. Just before we were supposed to open in Atlanta at the Fox Theater, Hal came into rehearsal one day and he was all excited and he was giggling, goes, "Oh my God, it's great. They're going to picket us in Atlanta. They're going to, because they're going to protest that, we're coming down." And we're like, "Well, you might think that's cool, but we're going to be the ones trying to get there." So what they were going to be protesting about was how, they were portrayed, Meanwhile, literally a couple of days before we left, a Wall Street Journal article, front page, came out listing the people who had been responsible for the lynching of Leon Frank. So what's important about that is, when they hung him, when they murdered him, the people that did it signed a letter basically saying, "We take responsibility. We are the ones that did this. It was the right thing to do, blah, blah, blah." And of course, there was huge anti-Semitism, and of course they also found out who was it Conlon? James Conlon was the one who everybody thought had originally done it, and in fact admitted to doing it when he was in jail. I think it might have been on his deathbed. He admitted that he was the one who had done it, which most people thought had done it, but they wanted to kill a Jew. They didn't want a Jew down there in the South at that time. So, especially one who had money and some amount of power. So, they published the letter on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, and all the names of those people were there. And it had been all the ancestors of those people who were going to be marching and protesting. So disappeared because they were, as they should have been, ashamed of it. They were still trying to, promote this horrible feeling of anti-Semitism, and that, that it was right to have done it. And then when they were called out, basically their ancestors were called out, it disappeared. But that was pretty intense. It was pretty intense. Yeah. And it's an incredible show. It's an important show. It's an important show. The most recent revival was wonderful, wonderful. And it was very emotional for me going to see it, because I was literally seeing, just like when I went to see the last show of Phantom, I'm literally seeing ghosts on the stage, because so many of my dear friends who were in those roles have passed on, and obviously the role is going to be cast with a similar type. So you'd hear a voice that was, for example, Don Grody, who I adored, was in the original company of Parade, Lincoln Center, and then he went on the road, and we used to play tennis together. He was a great, great man. And to hear, I think, oh God, who did it? In the most recent Broadway, I can see him. I can see his name. John Dossett, maybe. And he sounded just like Don. It sounded beautiful, and I was like, oh, I was just sitting there crying. And a lot of my friends who had been in the show said they felt the same way. It was very emotional. It was a beautiful show. Beautiful show.
Yes, and well, still so current in many ways with everything that's going on right now.
Yeah, no, it's, history repeats itself, and unfortunately that's never gone away. It's very sad.
I mean, even with the premiere of the most recent version, there were again protests at the start.
Yes, exactly. And if I recall, the premiere of the most recent version was during a time when there was an upsurge of anti-Semitism in the country at that time, too. So it was scary. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yep.
And there was another musical going into premiere around that time, Anne Frank, and also in the middle of everything.
Yeah, I know. Well, there's no coincidences, are there? I mean, energy, I believe, the energy that creates these kinds of things, it puts it out there. So, this is one of the reasons why theater is so important. It puts a spotlight on the things you need to think about, things you need to consider. And so that you're not just, with your head under a bushel. It's very important that you're, I think it magnifies parts of our lives, parts of our world that should be regarded regularly and brought up for healing, Yeah.
I'm so surprised when people are still saying that you shouldn't make a musical about certain subjects, because they still think that musicals are only happy and cheerful, when I think that's that's not been like that for decades.
Right. No, there's musical comedy and then there's musicals. There's a difference.
A lot of people know Les Miserables, and then they still say it should be cheerful.
No. Just Master of the House gets to be cheerful.
There was recently a conversation about Titanic the musical and how it shouldn't have been a musical, which I think is weird because there are so many stories about tragic events.
Look at opera. Look at opera.
Absolutely.
It's built on, there's some great tragic operas, please. It's high drama. Yeah.
I mean, when something has songs, it doesn't mean the song should be happy.
Yeah. It's art, Listen, the people who want a happy musical, there's plenty of happy musicals for them to go to. And that's okay.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the same with plays. There are farces, there are comedy pieces, and there are deep dramas.
I just saw August Osage County last night, and I couldn't sleep. You talk about drama. First of all, 3 acts, intense show. So yeah, you go to theater to learn, to escape, to immerse yourself, to grow. There's all sorts of reasons for going to theater, and they're all valid.
Absolutely. And well, I think people should read the description of shows before they start, so they know what they're getting into. And that's it. Once you're in, you're in.
Yeah, exactly. Me personally, I like to not know anything about the show before I see it if I can help it. Like, I don't read reviews. I haven't had a chance to see stuff yet. I'm purposely waiting. I want to judge for myself and see the story fresh, because it's hard to do that. Obviously all the older musicals, we know the story. So when there's something new, I like to get a fresh, vision on it.
I think the only thing I often want warnings for is with movies in particular, because I can't watch if they do anything with animals.
Yes, I get you. I can't watch. I think I did watch Marley and Me, and then that's the last time I was able to do that, especially since my husband and I are super active in dog rescue. I can't do that. And I also can't watch the Titanic because I met my husband on a cruise ship. So climbing on a cruise ship in Hawaii. And I remember when I had to watch the video about boat safety, and they talked about, if there's a fire, that the engine room will get closed off and within a certain amount of time. And my husband worked down there, and I was terrified. So I was like, I can't watch any movies about a ship going down. That's it. I'm not doing it. It's a nightmare for me.
Other than the roles we already talked about, what were some of your favorites over the years?
Definitely Helen in Fun Home. I did that recently at the Music Theater of Connecticut. It's an incredible role, very complicated. And what's nice about that is that it's the same age as me. So it was one of the first roles I did, not one of the first, one of the best roles I did after I was no longer an ingenue. And it was so nice that something was written with such depth and complication. Once again, a very complicated story and character. In my younger days, probably my favorite show, still even past Phantom and Cats, was playing Louisa in the Fantasticks. I loved that role. I loved playing that role. Singing Much More was one of my favorite songs to sing. Singing You Are Love, all that stuff was so singable, so easy to sing in my voice at that time. I loved playing Louisa. And the thing about Louisa is, she's definitely just a little piece of time because you can only play her for a little while. And it's like very bittersweet that you go on to the next part of your life and your career, and those are two that's together. I also got to play Truvy in Steel Magnolias recently, the play. And I really enjoyed that. It's very complicated dialogue with the 5 women. It's like one on top of the other. It was a great experience of skill because in fact, the women would get together before the show and we would speed through our lines together because everything was so dependent on the next person's line, you know. So it was a great experience in that way. What else? I actually have my resume up here because I can never remember what I've done unless I look. As far as stage, I mean, I've really enjoyed everything I've done. I played the Queen in Cinderella. I did one the A Grand Night for Singing. I did the part that Lynn Wintersteller did. They don't really have names. And then there's TV and some film stuff that I've done. I've done the ubiquitous Law and Order, which I loved because I watched that. I'm a serial watcher of Law and Order, NCIS, FBI. I love all those shows, so it was wonderful to be on that.
Do you still have a dream role?
I get asked that. Yeah, I guess I would love to play. I think the character's name is Arlene in Baby. Beth Fowler originated the role. I don't know if Baby will ever be brought back. I loved that show. Again, the music that she gets to sing is just so poignant and so beautiful and so well written for the voice, especially of a woman of a mature age. I mean, the song Patterns and What If We Had Loved Like That. I mean, they're just gorgeous songs, but just a wonderful character and storyline. Are you familiar with Baby very much? The show?
Some bits of it online recently.
Yeah, it's a story of three couples that all find themselves either pregnant or trying to get pregnant, and one is a young girl. That part was created by the incredible Liz Calloway, and she sang the famous anthem. The story goes on. And then there's the middle couple who are trying to get pregnant and can't, and then there's the older couple that find themselves suddenly pregnant when they're empty nesters, and how all these things change their lives. It's just a beautifully written, and it didn't last that long on Broadway, and I'm damned if I know why. I thought it was just an incredible show. I think that'd be one of the roles I'd love to play. What else? I just recently did Mrs. Potts in Beauty and the Beast at the Summer Theater of New Canaan, and that was a lovely role to do. And you get to sing the title song. I probably never want to do it again because it was physically very demanding, wearing a 35-pound costume, dressed like a teapot where you only get to use one arm. So it took me a while physically to recover from that. Offhand, that's all. I can't think of anything else. I'll probably think of it while we're talking, and then I'll shout it out to you.
You talked about your dog rescuing. When did you get into that, and how can we help?
You can help by never buying dogs. You can help by adopting dogs and helping to put puppy mills out of business, raising awareness for that. Anytime you buy a dog in a store, it's a dog from a puppy mill. A puppy mill is a horrible place where most dogs never get to live. All dogs never get to live inside a house, often don't get to live inside, are stacked often one on top of another in cages, and their little paws never touch the grass. They don't have human contact. The lucky ones are the puppies that get bought. The unfortunate ones are the ones that are kept there for years and years breeding. So they're horrible, horrible places. And I got involved with it with my husband back in 2001, right after 9/11. We adopted our first dog, Brandy. She was a toy fox terrier. She's on my website, and I talk about dog rescue on my website. If you go to my website, which is RaissaKatonaBennett.com, there's all these tabs, and you can read about rescue and why it's important. Brandy was our first dog, and we adopted her when she was about 7.5 years old, and she was incredible. She made us a family, and we'd had her about 2.5 months when someone approached us about fostering an old Chihuahua named Goldie. And long story short, that's how we got started fostering and volunteering. And the year that my husband was a facial plastic surgeon and a sinus surgeon, and he did a fellowship down in Birmingham for a year. So when I went down there with him, I became a dog trainer because I've always loved animals, and I learned how to train dogs to make them more adoptable, not to make them do tricks, although I can, just to teach them how to feel safe and be a good citizen and stuff like that. And And so that just kind of started us on our journey of getting involved with rescue and fostering. Throughout the pandemic, we have fostered ourselves over 40 dogs, not at the same time, obviously. Our most recent ones was Marley, was a King Charles Cavalier that I adopted to my good friend Natasha Yvette Williams, who is the star of she was in Parade with me. That's how I met her. She starred in Some Like It Hot as Sweet Sue. And she's she's done 8 Broadway shows. And so she told me she wanted a King Charles Cavalier. And I said, we've got him. So I got Marley and fostered him. And then she and her husband and their 2 wonderful children have him now. And he's living a wonderful life. And then we had Shallot, another, a Cavapoo, who I adopted to a lovely couple in New Jersey. And then we had Dolly and Daisy, which were 2 adorable 3.5 and 4.5 pound Chihuahuas, long hair, beautiful girls. And they just went to a good friend of mine, North Carolina. And the last one of that group left is Cowboy. And Cowboy's a 1.5-year-old toy poodle, maybe with something else in him because these adorable ears.
Mm.
You can also see great video of him on my Facebook page. He's just a great little dog, and we'd love to get him in his forever home soon for 2 reasons. One is this little guy never really had a puppyhood because he was used as a breeder in a puppy mill, which means so he lived his whole life in a confined area, maybe 4 by 4 feet by 4 feet, and didn't have this loving and this cuddling. And look at how much he loves it. I mean, it's just heartbreaking. But my husband and I are going to Sicily in September for 2 weeks. And I'd love to see him settled in his new home by then. Otherwise, I'll have to foster him out to another foster in my group and then take him back. But I mean, I just want him to be bonding with his new family because he's just delicious and he's an easy, sweet boy. Everybody wants him when they see him, but he needs a fenced-in backyard. This guy does. So, because he's a runner. He's very tired today. Why are you so tired? You're exhausted. You're exhausted. Sweet thing. Yeah, I mean, we volunteer with a particular group called Shih Tzu and Fur Baby Small Breed Dog Rescue. Whenever I sell a CD, 100% of the profits go to this dog rescue. I have 3 CDs, and you can see them on Amazon or YouTube or iTunes. 2 of them you can. The other one you have to get through my website. I still need to get it on iTunes. And the rescue is based out of St. Mary's, Georgia. And we transport up and down the Eastern Seaboard. We have transport once a month. We just had this last weekend where volunteers drive like an hour and a half, 2 hours with a bunch of dogs. And then the next group picks them up and continues to drive them north and vice versa. And that's how we do that. And we're taking an awful lot of dogs in because unfortunately down south, puppy mills are not illegal. And so that's education, letting people know that it's a horrible business. And these are sentient beings. These are beings with feelings, and they deserve better.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. But I'll tell you what, it becomes a full-time job when you're doing it right. And so I've learned when I need to take breaks from it. My voice teacher said to me about 2 months ago, and I was trying to get ready for my show. So I did my one-woman show. And when you're singing by yourself for an hour and a half, it's vocally demanding. It's actually more demanding than doing a regular show, because in a regular show, even if you're the lead, you're not singing every single song by yourself for an hour and a half. So, and I do a lot of cabaret. I know you interviewed Marty Millett recently, yes. A good friend of mine. The cabaret, I do a lot of cabaret and concert work, and because it's first of all, I love the medium. I love breaking the fourth wall. I love connecting with people that way. And it's also just a way to keep performing between, the theater jobs as well. But it's not less than theater. It's just in addition to. My teacher said to me, "Have you considered not fostering for a while so you could focus on your career?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess I need to take a break again." But during the pandemic, we were able to do it because there was really nothing going on.
Yes.
But now it's time to kind of put that on the back burner and just help with education. What I do when I'm not fostering, and when I am fostering, is I'll do the adoptions counselor, where you take the applications that come in and you interview the people. and teach them what they need to know, things like that. So it's a passion that both my husband and I share.
What is one of your favorite stage memories?
Favorite stage memories. I have so many. Oh, wow. I mean, my first thought, believe it or not, was when I was in Phantom, we had a wonderful character actor named Charles Rule. I believe he was in his mid 70s at the time. And he was one of the first, the only person I ever knew that I know, and now I know some, but at that time he actually retired from the theater after doing like probably 30 Broadway shows, like all the original Oklahoma and all those ones. And he was incredible. And we had a lot of very funny moments with Chuck on stage. And I just realized I can't tell you what they are, but but they were memorable. You know, I think the first time that I went on in Cats was memorable for me. It just, like I said, it represented so much. You know, standing at the edge of the stage at the very end, and I love to sing. I mean, I love to sing, but I particularly, at that time in my life, particularly loved to sing high. So I'd be finishing off the show at the end of the stage in that unitard, singing a high B flat was just the culmination of years of passionate work and driving forward, you know, with a goal in mind. You know, because when I came to New York in my early 20s, by the time I went to New York, I had never had professional dance lessons or anything. Everything that I did on my own when I had enough money to afford it. And so, you know, I'd be working in a restaurant as a waitress, also playing the piano and singing for extra money in that same restaurant, going to every audition I could possibly go to, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And then so to find myself several years later in Cats, you know, and it was such a hit show at the time. I was like, thank you, God. You know, I mean, I worked hard, but I have lots of friends that worked really, really hard and weren't able, and just as talented, if not more so, that were not able to do that. So I'm well aware of how blessed I am that, hey, that I was in the right place at the right time, you know, but I was ready. You know, so you've always got to be ready for your shot, you know. So I think that was one. Certainly the first time I went on in Phantom, just even as the princess, I was like, wow, I'm on the biggest show on Broadway. I'm, you know, and it was, and again, singing beautiful music. I'm trying to think if I had, I offhand, I mean, just it's like saying, what's your favorite song? It's so hard to pick. There's just so many memories in general, you know? Yeah. And some of my favorite memories, I can't say, I just realized.
Think of a message for theater fans.
Please go to theater. Please support live theater. I know it's expensive, but there's ways that you can go in your community. There's also lots of discount ticket sites that you can go to. You can join things like theater extras and play-by-play, and you can, you know, see things. You can join TDF, and I just would love if theater audiences could be a little bit more polite and realize that they're not seeing a movie or a TV show and not talk or be on their cell phone or be eating and rattling papers. I have to say, it's very, very disappointing that they allow you to buy stuff and bring it into the theater with you now. You know, I don't like that. I think if you're going to have a cocktail during intermission, you have the cocktail and you come back to your seat. I really don't care for the drive-in movie quality of it, but they're just doing whatever they can to get people in the seats, you know? So it's expensive to put on a show, very expensive.
You think they could sell other things than food because it's so distracting for the actors?
Well, I don't know. You know, on a Broadway stage, I didn't find it distracting because you can't see it that well the way the lights are. But in the smaller theaters, it is. You know, you can see everything they're doing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I heard some people taking like big meals that you can really smell in a smaller theater.
Yeah, but even still, it's just I just feel like it's a lack of respect for the art form. But that's me. I guess I'm old school.
I heard your exes don't like it either, so
Yeah, yeah.
if you
Well,
see it offense.
yeah, I mean, it's just you know, my feeling is that it's thoughtless for the people around you. If they
Yes,
want to smell your tuna fish sandwich, in the theater or on a bus, I mean, it's just a matter of being thoughtful. Yeah.
I think the interview is ready.
I think so too. I think we've covered a lot of ground, and it's been delightful talking with you.
Absolutely, it's wonderful meeting you and your lovely foster dogs.
Oh, thank you. And if you, I suppose something you say is if people would like to, I would love it if they would follow me on Spotify. I have my two CDs are on Spotify that they can listen to and follow, and write a review on Amazon if they want for me. I have my most recent, well, actually my first one that I did, Another Kind of Light. Um, Michael John LaCusa wrote me two songs, and he's the man who wrote The Wild Party, The Gardens of Annuncia, all those things. He wrote me a beautiful song called Bye Bye Ingenue, and he also wrote me a fun song called Torch Song for Raissa. So in addition, there's other wonderful songs that I love on here. So I hope that they'll give that a listen. I also have my live Jerome Kern Live from Feinstein's CD on there too. So I would love it if they would listen to those and follow me there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us and have a lovely day.
You as well, Dannii. Thank you. I'll look forward to seeing you again. I'm enjoying watching your shows too.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Behind the Mirror of Music with Dannii Cohen.